Hello and welcome to Classroom Chronicle. I'm your host, Pete Braley. This is the show that highlights what's going on in the schools that serve New Bedford students. And our guest today is the Superintendent of Schools in New Bedford, and that is Andrew Oleary. Andrew, welcome.
Hi, Pete. Great to be here.
Great to have you here. When I reached out to Andrew, it was right around the time we were having the State of the City address from the mayor and the State of the Commonwealth from the governor, so I thought, why don't we get a state of the school system? So I'm sorry I don't have a catered lunch for everybody, but at least
we need to, well, at least we have an audience of thousands out there. We'll create a bigger audience.
First, if you don't mind, I'd like to get to know a little bit about you. Who is Andrew Oleary? Where did you grow up? What kind of student was a superintendent? That's something I'd like to know. You're from Ireland, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I'm from Ireland. More importantly, from County Cork. We're very proud. Those of us from Cork are very proud of our identity. So I've been in the States for 23 years now. So
what brought you here?
Well, I came here for school. I was in upstate New York finishing my master's program. And then I met my wife, and she was from the region, and she was working actually in New Bedford schools, and I came to New Bedford and started working for the district then.
So we have Mrs. Oleary to thank for all this.
Yeah. It's all her fault.
Now, where did you go to school? Did you do most of your schooling in Ireland?
I was in Ireland right through my undergrad. I went to, it was essentially a Catholic school. We called it Colóiste, means college, it means school in Irish, Colóiste Críostaí, Christ the King School. And that was so a traditional Irish Catholic school in the 80s in Ireland, which is its own story, very somewhat regimented, but very community-based as well. And then I went to University College Cork for my undergrad in government and political science. And then that network of political science led me to do my master's in history and political science in upstate New York in a small Catholic college, College of St. Rose. And by that point I had my eye very firmly on the United States and Massachusetts and New York. Yeah.
So I have to ask you, do you just kind of shake your head at St. Patrick's Day? It's an American thing, isn't it?
Right, it is, but it's nice. It's nice that folks are so invested in Ireland. Sometimes it is a little over the top, sometimes it is a little stereotypical, but you got to go with it.
Do you eat corned beef and cabbage?
No, absolutely. I remember eating something similar when my dad was on strike, when we were saving some pennies, so it's not luxury cuisine, but again, you've just got to dive right into it and appreciate that there is this love of Ireland, and if it's the green is a little too bright sometimes and a little hokey, that's okay.
Okay. Did you always want to be in education? You mentioned political science, and
I'm a history and political science guy, so I always want to be a history teacher, and so I still give people a hard time if I can twist a meeting into a history lesson and get in front of the whiteboard and link everything to history. I'll do it, so don't give me any excuse. And actually, as I did start working for the district in a teaching capacity, I also started teaching undergrad at Bristol Community College. So for about 10 years I was teaching history, ancient history, U.S. history. It was a wonderful time teaching at BCC as well.
Do you miss being in the classroom, or do you still have an opportunity every now and then?
I'm a little too busy now to get into the classroom, but I do miss it. I miss it a lot. I miss engaging with students. I miss having the opportunity to read up on history myself and sharpen the saw, as they say. So I miss it quite a bit. I think anybody who's been in teaching and then they go into other roles, they should always hunger to get back to the classroom, right?
So the superintendent is in charge of pretty much everything, right? But is there an average day for you, and if so, what's that like?
Well, the average day, there are a lot of meetings, okay? There's a lot of meetings. You do need to connect with a lot of folks at all different levels, and things change depending on the time of year. Right now we're going to be coming into budget season, we're going to be coming into negotiations. So you have your regular meetings, you do want to get out to the schools a lot. And I do love to get out to the schools, and I do love to go to all our events. Every weekend I call it Whaler Weekends because there's always so much going on. There's sports events, I see you there. There's always different activities. This weekend is no exception with the HBCU College Fair and some additional sports events as well. So it can be a little eclectic, your schedule.
All right, so the state of the schools is, what would you say?
I would say the state of the schools is strong. The state of New Bedford Public School District is strong. I think I'm always fascinated, and I love to tell people what a remarkable institution New Bedford Public Schools is. There's the history of New Bedford Public Schools going back 200 years, but there's also what we do and how many lives we touch on a daily basis and how many incredible people we have. That's part of my job as well, just to stand next to the incredible work we're doing and shine a light on it. But we're in a strong position. There are a lot of needs that education meets. There's a lot of needs that a public, comprehensive district like New Bedford Schools meets. And I think we have great people meeting those needs every day, and the future's bright.
Right. I understand you told me that in our notes here, you said that this is the time that you see plans for next year, right? You always have to stay ahead.
Yeah, we're always thinking about next year. You're keeping an eye on the budget. Not just trying to balance dollars and pennies, but the budget can be the DNA. If you emphasize one aspect of what you're doing and put resources, and these are valuable resources in our community, valuable resources from the state, we have to put them behind the most important things, make sure our staff are well compensated and programs are in place. So all of a sudden you've got all at the moment, we're thinking ahead of that for next year. Hiring is always so important, make sure the workforce is right there. And then longer term improvements, if we wanted to improve one aspect of a program or another aspect of a program, improve things in facilities, look at some more career tech ed, see about fine arts, all these things we're really eager to improve, get into a cycle of improvement and plan ahead.
That's been a big focus, right? The career tech ed, just in the past 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, it's a huge conversation, but it's also a simple idea, right? Everyone gets excited. One thing I've noticed, everyone gets excited, and I'm sure when you go to our schools, everyone gets excited seeing kids with hands-on learning.
Oh, definitely.
Okay,
Yep.
and then that's essentially what vocational education is. I think sometimes we get a little too caught up thinking that in high school we're training folks for careers. What we're really doing is exposing kids to multiple career pathways. What we're really doing is allowing kids to engage in hands-on learning. It's good for the hands. There's a great book called Shop Class as Soulcraft. It's good for the soul to do hands-on learning. I'm sure when you do little projects at home, or you tinker around with something at home, a lot of folks have an aptitude for that. It's exciting, it's validating. It's why this book he talks about, it's why we have multiple fingers. We are engineered as humans to engage tactilely with objects. There's a real deep learning philosophy and teaching philosophy around that, and I wonder, have we forgotten that over the years with ed reform? Now, very specifically, we do want to engage students in specific career pathways. We do, the world needs plenty of HVAC technicians, needs plumbers, needs electricians, needs carpenters, and all schools, not just the traditional vocational schools, should have a role in that.
How did you feel about the vote this past November that MCAS is no longer a requirement for graduation?
Yeah, we didn't weigh in on that. We were asked multiple times to say, well, what's your opinion? And I didn't like the binary nature of the ballot question, but hey, that's a ballot question. I understand where that came from. I understand there was a lot of frustration with MCAS, not just as a test that students were compelled to take for graduation, but also I think the state put a lot of faith in MCAS. MCAS can tell us everything about a district, and it absolutely could not tell you everything about a district, could not tell you everything about a student. So the state somewhat made a rod for its own back with that. They said they put too much faith in MCAS, and so that was all the more reason the ballot question wanted to move past MCAS. That said, it was a data point. It did have its uses. It is still around. It's just not a graduation requirement. So I would say education and our understanding of data, our ability to gauge where students are at, kind of evolved past MCAS. So to me, it wasn't the most important thing, but it was, at least there was a conversation about it.
Does New Bedford have a policy on cell phones? Because I know there are other school systems across the country, and I think Fall River, where you've got to lock them up before class.
Yeah, and we're moving in that direction. So our policy is very clear. Students should not have phones out. They shouldn't be engaged in their phones during the school day. That's just the policy. Now, a more rigorous enforcement of that policy is where districts are with pouches, essentially. It's called the Yonder pouch. That's the proprietary name. And I think you see that. I don't go to a lot of concerts, apparently, but apparently at concerts you have to lock them up, or comedian comedy shows and all of that in Boston.
They don't want them filmed and
They don't want them
posted.
filmed. So it's becoming a little more common in those realms, but I think it is going to become very common in schools. And next year, we did mention at school committee on Monday, next year we are going to be implementing that at all of our secondary grade levels. So from grade 6 and up, students are going to have to use a pouch to lock up their phones during the school day. And so that's, in one level, an enforcement of the policy. And on the other level, it's really starting to address the level of distraction, the level of anxiety that ubiquitous cell phones are creating. There's a lot of good dialogue about that, and I think we've all seen examples of that.
We had Wally Williams in from Greater New Bedford Voc Tech, and he was telling me that the data shows that the grades and participation and a lot of things go up when the kids are not on those phones.
Yeah, we've talked to Fall River, we talked to Global Learning Charter, and everyone says it's almost the same quote every time. This is the best thing we've ever done. We want schools to be an oasis for learning. We want to minimize distraction.
I understand preschool is growing.
Yeah,
because we tend to focus so much on the high school, but we can't forget the younger grade because that's you got to watch it all.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a real advancements in understanding what young people need, what infants, toddlers, 3 and 4-year-olds need. There's a real understanding. I mean, we need to cast our mind back to 20 years ago in Massachusetts. Kindergarten wasn't compulsory, right? New Bedford did offer kindergarten, but a lot of districts in Massachusetts did not. I think up to recently, even some districts in Massachusetts only offered half-day kindergarten. So that's kindergarten.
That's right.
So now go beyond kindergarten and we see a lot of 3 and 4-year-olds in preschool. But preschool is way more complex than folks realize. I think there is still this sense that it's some form of daycare or it's some form of general hands-on engagement for the students. But what we found is that with the appropriate assessments of 3 and 4-year-olds, we can identify learning disabilities earlier. And then we have excellent early educators and excellent special education department who can address disabilities and learning disabilities as well early on. And that's why there's a lot of concern around autism and things like that. But really what you do want to do is address those learning disabilities early, and that will unlock a student's potential and allow them to thrive. This was the case with my own sons when they went to Carlos Pacheco. They were in pre-K programs, they had an IEP, and now they're really thriving at New Bedford High School.
Right. Yeah. My youngest daughter had an IEP too, and it was such a change. It was early, maybe second grade, third grade, when we had a meeting. And you're right, it's like a light bulb goes off. They find another way to do it that works for them.
Yeah, and I think we've forgotten, or we forget sometimes, how much science and our understanding of children's needs has evolved in the last 20 years. A lot of developments in cognitive science and understanding disabilities, which really doesn't get enough attention because we have such a formal structure for it with the IEPs. But there's some wonderful stories about unlocking the potential of students and ensuring equity and inclusion.
Right. I think I know the answer to this, but I'd love to hear from you. How important is it to have involved parents?
It's huge, but I'm a parent of 5.
5.
And in this day and age, it's very, very difficult to be an involved parent, to be an attentive parent, to meet all of your family and children's needs. So you have to be cognizant of that because, as you say, a parent's involvement is crucial. Maybe it's the most crucial aspect. There's a researcher, John Hattie, who talks about what are the big impact factors in education, and parental involvement is huge. So we want to do our part to get more parents and caregivers involved in their students' lives. But I know, absolutely, it's tough.
Yeah. I know chronic absenteeism has been an issue for years, but I'm reading there's improvement there?
Yeah, what we've worked hard with the school committee to create an academic achievement subcommittee. So that's a subcommittee that meets monthly and for about 2+ hours, and we go over all our data, and we have these deep discussions which are so important about what's going on with core content areas, but what's going on with chronic absenteeism. And that differs from daily attendance. That's one thing we've learned. So you can have an attendance rate of 93%, 94%, and you think you're doing good. But then you look over to the other column and you say, well, actually, there's this core group of students who are missing 10% or more days, sometimes 20%.
Wow.
And if you just focus on that percentage rate, the students who are coming regularly,
Okay.
if they come a little more regularly, they boost up that rate. But the students who are missing significant amounts, I don't know that even before the pandemic we were even looking hard at that core group of students. And so I think we're having some great conversations about what are the barriers. Maybe there's some medical barriers, some health barriers, some anxiety, a lack of family connectedness, some supports families need, or just real intrinsic motivation that we can help work with. There's so many stories in chronic absenteeism that we really need to look hard at that. And I will say again, I don't think Massachusetts or school districts were looking at the 10 to 14% chronic absenteeism that was common before the pandemic, but this is a great opportunity to do it.
Speaking of the pandemic, have we recovered from that as far as attendance and all? My daughter is an athletic trainer at Norton High School, and she told me that the freshman class this year kind of forgot how to get along with people because they were quarantined.
Yep.
Are you still seeing issues like that?
Well, we saw, I think, the first full year back from the pandemic, I think you did see that. You could look at the headlines and there was a fight at this high school and a fight at that high school all around. And I think that kind of regulation or social norms or just regular schedule, there was a lot of challenges with that. I think we've overcome that now. However, there is a lot of talk. Your overall question about recovery, that's the million or billion dollar question. And you see a lot of educational dialogue about that. Have we recovered from the pandemic? But I would point out that this is a new cohort of students. And education, you do that sometimes with statistics. Oh, achievement in 2013 was at this level, and achievement in 2025 is at this level. Therefore, we have slipped. And that's just not how it works. We have a different cohort of students right now. We have a better understanding, like I said, with science and advancements in our understanding of education and pedagogy. We have a better understanding of how to reach students now, but we need patience, and we need incremental gains, and we need resources, and it's hard work. If education was that easy, it was just turning a switch or increasing out accountability or just using MCAS, it would be solved by now. But education is hard work, and any educator will tell you that.
All right. The immigration issue has been front and center in this country for a while. You recently sent a letter with your views on the issue as it pertains to the schools. Would you briefly explain that again? And how's that been received?
Yeah, I think so. What happened? Obviously, it's no new news. Is that there's a new administration in Washington, and one of the top political issues is immigration. So what happened was there was a lot of national discussion about whether schools and churches and hospitals were sensitive locations. And the word from Washington was, no, they're not sensitive locations, so they are subject to immigration enforcement. Now, we pointed out, we got a lot of questions from staff on that, and we got a lot of questions from the media on that. And we pointed out that while it's highly unlikely that immigration enforcement will occur around schools, said we do have long-standing protocols, consistent protocols that nobody has access to our buildings, that we don't share data with anybody, and that we work with all of our families. All of our families have access to our schools and have the right to education. So I think what you've seen in the weeks since is that folks have realized that any immigration enforcement impact at schools is unlikely. But the anxieties are there, the anxieties are real. Our schools benefit significantly and are enriched by our immigrant families in the city. The city benefits significantly. So it's very important for us to be a resource for all our families and to make sure that school is not disrupted. That's a key mission for us.
When I read the story and I read your statement, my first question was, is this even an issue? Is it really has it happened?
No, and it's highly unlikely to happen.
Yeah.
But the anxiety is real. I think I think there's this binary again that folks that folks are documented or undocumented, and that folks are subject to enforcement or not. I think things are a little more complicated than that, and there's just a lot of disruption and confusion. And certainly, we don't want to be political, but I think we can all say that there's a lot of chaotic messages out there. I think we can all agree on that. And schools should not be disrupted. That's the bottom line. It's very important that from bell to bell and throughout the school year that we have a warm, welcoming environment. I can't imagine anyone doesn't want that.
Yeah. Speaking of schools being disrupted, the issue with the Department of Education, if it does go away, What are we going to notice?
Yeah, I think, and that's a question we've been pondering and we might speak more about as well, but the U.S. Department of Education provides about, let's just look at the money, provides about 8 to 10% of our overall funding that we receive. There's well-known grants like Title I, IDEA, which supports students on IEPs as well. Whether those funds would go away or would be reallocated in another way is a question. The U.S. Department of Education guarantees students civil rights, so it has worked over the years. There's an unfortunate history of segregation in the United States and even in Massachusetts. The civil rights should be guaranteed for students. The needs of students with disabilities haven't always been met. The U.S. Department of Education is there to enforce those aspects as well. So it's very much in flux right now, but I think it's important that we point out that the U.S. Department of Education has always played a strong role. But so it's hard to say what the impacts will be, but I don't think there will be any significant disruption from what I'm seeing right now.
Right. I know you're a big cheerleader for sports and the fine arts.
Yeah.
How important is that? Because I know that there's always a segment of the population that says kids should be learning. But I'm a believer, because I've seen it with my own kids and myself, that all of those things, they teach you how to manage your time. You pick up math from music, from learning to. Your thoughts on the fine arts and sports?
One of my favorite questions is, when I want to get all abstract and think about these things, is what are schools for, right?
Okay.
And if you really think about that and sit with that a while, what are schools for? And what is a well-rounded education? And what does our school mean to its community? And all of a sudden you start having that conversation, you start to see the importance of athletics. And I just love the sense of community. I just love the spirit of New Bedford that you see in our athletic programs. The red and white, I'm a big fan of our red and white. Those are actually the colors of County Cork in Ireland as well.
Oh, that's why you're here. Okay.
The red and white, and the Whaler pride and Whaler spirit. And it's just great to see that. And all of that has those benefits you mentioned. Students who are more engaged in athletics are more likely to succeed academically. So one thing reinforces the other. Getting back to the MCAS question, looking at education in schools from a narrow lens hasn't worked. We need well-rounded young people coming out of our schools, and our athletic programs are just fantastic. We are having, I'm not a big fan of this word winningist.
Okay.
I don't think it's a dictionary accurate definition.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But I think this is the winningest winter season we've ever had. So maybe I'll start using it now. And folks should come out. Go on New Bedford Public Schools Facebook, check out the athletic schedule, and come to a game, and you'll have a great time.
Yeah, I know. It's always that on those nights when, of course, New Bedford plays Durfee or Brockton, the whole place is rocking.
Yeah,
so
we have a Durfee game coming up, girls basketball. I'm really looking forward to that. And then I just checked the MIA rankings, and we're ranking pretty good for the playoffs as well. So winter season is going to be extended.
Yeah. And spring season usually starts around March, the third week, like the 19th or something. So.
Yeah, and my boys, of course, my Michael was on the swim team. Michael and Connor are on the soccer team, and then volleyball's coming up.
I was going to say, they both play volleyball?
Yeah. Connor was JV last year. Michael was varsity, so varsity again. And volleyball's turning out to be really exciting.
I've seen you at the gym a few times when we do sporting events. Is that difficult can you turn the superintendent off and become dad, or?
Well, yeah, and I go there for other games as well. I go for my own kids' games as well, and I just go there because it's just a great time. So, sometimes I might get a little annoyed at a refereeing decision, and I have to remember I can't yelp or yell, and I've got to be composed. But I like joining some Whaler chants and shouting for the Whalers as well. That's a sports fan in me.
Is there anything else that you wanted to, in the state of the schools, address that I haven't brought up?
Well, one thing I love to say is these are your schools.
Okay.
We are New Bedford Public Schools. We are the city schools. We like to say this is your city. These are your students. This is your New Bedford Public Schools. And one thing I've noticed as a parent and looking at my own students, New Bedford Schools is wonderful in that whatever you put in, you're going to get out. The more you put into New Bedford Schools as a student, as a staff member, as a community member, the more you're going to get out. And finally, we want to hear from you. What do you think about the schools? What are your concerns? These are your schools. I work for the community. I work for the staff and students, so I want to hear from everybody.
A few years ago, New Bedford High did not have the best reputation. People were afraid to go there in some cases. I feel that's changed. Do you? I would assume you feel the same way.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, anytime a police car gets called
Sure.
there or a fire truck, it's going to blow up Facebook.
Yeah. So the social media stuff is unfortunate, not just in terms of schools. I think nationally, social media has become anti-social media. I don't think it gives an accurate picture. I think schools, there's a fear factor with schools a lot. There's a lot of talks about, oh, this curriculum or that issue. It's become caught up in the culture wars, and it doesn't reflect. So some of what you see on social media, it does not reflect in any way what's going on in schools. Now, when I go to schools, and I go to New Bedford High School, one of my favorite expressions is, wow, this is a happy place. Everyone is happy, everyone is engaged. There are 3,000 students and hundreds of staff who just love being there and are happy and engaged. And I've got two of them myself, and actually I have a third son who will be joining New Bedford High this spring as well. So we're all in as a Whaler family. You have to remember, this is a community. So we made the mistake of narrowing down schools, right? And narrowing them, it's all about their ranking, or it's all about this outcome or that outcome. New Bedford High School is a community. It's a wonderful representation of the diversity of our city. It's a wonderful representation of the potential for our city. And it's an inclusive environment with students with all different needs, all different abilities. They're all right there. I just love being there. I love my students being there. And if you're an 8th grader now, or a parent of an 8th grader, that's where you need your student to be. The potential is unmatched.
How often do you get out? Do you get to every school?
It's
Have you
hard,
tried
and
to
so
do that over the years?
I just sat down with my calendar today, so I'm going to make a hard charge when we get back from school vacation. I want to get out to as many schools as possible. I want to see our programs we haven't looked at before. Our special education programs. We have a wonderful array of special educators and different unique programs we have, from our programs at Pulaski, from our preschool programs, right up to our transitional resource program at the high school. So the diversity of what's on offer and what a remarkable institution like New Bedford Schools does is just wonderful to go and see. To go and see the wood shop at Trinity Day Academy, to go and see culinary programs, to go and see robotics programs. I just love going out and about the district whenever time permits.
So the state of the schools is strong, right?
The state of the schools is very strong. New Bedford Public Schools might just be the strongest asset that the city of New Bedford has, but I'm biased.
And how are we are we still looking at new schools or things like that? Or?
Yeah, the building projects are coming along. We are doing more, I think, than any other district in Massachusetts now. But then we have more to do, right? We had a deferred maintenance, that famous term, deferred maintenance. And then, you know, I am known to kind of pick on the state in terms of their obligations to New Bedford. I think the state has a much bigger obligation to New Bedford and needs to do more. And anyone wants to ask me about that, I can give you the numbers, I can give you the stats, I can give you the policies, and I can point out how the state should do more for New Bedford Public Schools facilities. And once they do invest, New Bedford Public Schools will pay them back in terms of what we're able to do within those facilities. So we're doing more than ever before on a day-to-day level. When something gets broke, it gets fixed. And that may seem like a simple statement, but I think sometimes there's this perception of schools are crumbling and failing. Gets broke, gets fixed. We do maintenance projects. We open new buildings. We're going to open a central kitchen. We're going to open a school-based health center. We've opened a new turf field. We're going to open a new Duval-Congdon school, and we're going to plan for a new Ashley Swift school. So these projects are very exciting, especially knowing there's going to be young people and educators in those buildings for decades to come.
Right. Thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
My guest today, the Superintendent of Schools, Andrew Oleary. If you have an idea for a guest we should have on, remember we're open to any idea that has to do with the schools that serve New Bedford students. You can contact me. The email is peter.braley@newbedford-ma.gov. So until next time, for Classroom Chronicle, I'm Pete Braley. Take care.
When I was 10, my mom got deported. We had a difficult time, and I feel that's why I didn't get to finish school. My husband is really supportive in a way that he pushed me to go back to school.
She wants to have a career so her kids can look up to her.
They both keep me motivated to go to school, and they see that if I do it, like, they can do it too, you know? I feel that everything's possible.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.